Welcome back to the Links Golf Podcast. I am Al Lunsford, joined by Joe Passov. We are entering into season 19 of the Links Golf Podcast. And this season, we're presented by our friends at Perry Golf. They are the gold standard in luxury golf travel with the world's most extensive collection of custom tours, small group tours, and group golf cruises. Visit perrygolf.com to play the game and see the world. Joe, welcome back to the podcast. I'm going to start out with a quick hitter for you as we go into a new season. Maybe this is something we do every episode. Just hit you right off the bat with a question. So the first one's pretty easy. Where's the last place you played, and how did that go?
Al, glad to be back doing another season of the Links Golf Podcast. And actually, the last round of golf that I played it's been a couple of weeks now. Some other things intervening, but on that occasion, it was at the Omni La Costa Resort and Spa North Course in Carlsbad, California. That today is, as we record this, is hosting the final match of the NCAA Division I Men's Championship. And interesting results so far in both the men's and the women's. But today I think it's Virginia and Oklahoma State, not necessarily the favorites going in, but they're going to get a golf course as they have been for the last 5 or 6 days. Just an absolutely tremendous redesign, and it was a redesign by Gil Hanse and Jim Wagner and the Cavemen team. They just took what had been a solid, very respectable Dick Wilson design that has seen many, many professional tournaments and infused it with a ton of variety of risk reward options, especially down the stretch. And again, every bit as difficult as the old one, frankly, but much more fun to play. So, had a wonderful visit out there. My first visit was in playing that golf course was 1989, and to get a chance to see, how good it could be after Mr. Hanse and team did the renovations. I think it's earned a great deal of respect from the top collegiate players in the men's and women's programs.
Probably not the first time, and in fact, definitely not the last time we're going to hear Gil Hanse's name on this podcast, because I'm sure I'll mention it at some point. Certainly a little more glitzy and glamorous than the last course I played, which was Dolphin Head Golf Club on Hilton Head Island. We'd gone down for the close of our summer issue. That's out the door. People can preview that issue on our website, and subscribers will either have that in hand or it's coming soon for anyone listening to that and subscribe to Links. So you'll see that soon. But Dolphin Head, I'd heard great things and good bones to that place for sure. Whenever you're saying a place has good bones to it, it's probably sort of like a backhanded compliment, I guess. Just a little tired, honestly. Um, Played well, had a chip in from the back of the green. That's always fun, and broke 80 for the first time in a while. So it was a good day to play golf. We beat the sun by playing a twilight round, but yeah, just it was fine. Yeah, I wish it was a little bit more than it was in better condition, but it was fine.
Yeah, there's the deal. I lived on Hilton Head for 4 years in the 1990s with Lynx. Never got over to Dolphin Head, even in all my visits. I think that was Gary Player, Ron Kirby.
Yeah, Gary Player. I don't know about Ron Kirby, but they listed as Gary on their end, and yeah, again, same thing. I'd always heard great things, but had never gotten the chance to go, and was itching to play, so scooted over there. Um, I mean, I would play it again, but maybe not my first choice, I'd say.
All right, fair enough.
Yeah.
Hilton Head has a lot of remarkable options, and sometimes even a hidden gem just stays hidden.
I think that was built around in the early 70s, that course. But today we're going to talk about courses from a bygone era and what many so affectionately know as the golden age of golf course design, roughly like that first third of the 20th century, where you have all these classic courses being built by the titans of golf course design as we know them today. Your Alistair McKenzie's, your A.W. Tillinghast, Donald Ross, Rayner McDonald. It's an extensive list, and we'll cover some more of those guys here too. But effectively today, Joe, we're seeing that a lot of their handiwork is found behind closed doors, or at least behind private doors at golf clubs that are really inaccessible for the public. Some, most in some cases, but not all. And that's what we are going to talk about today. Some places the public can go and see, or walk on the same grounds as the work that was done by some of these golden age golf course architects.
Yeah, I think Al, if you follow social media a bit, it seems like everybody is humble bragging about they got onto this course and this course and this course, all, again, behind lock gates and the rest of it. So, through networking, some of these places are definitely accessible. But for the places where you don't have to network, where you can just step up, pay a green fee, or stay at a hotel and get aboard the golf course, um, you know, for folks who just want to experience architecture by these architects, uh, it's not always easy to find. Of these golden agers that we're going to talk about, one stands out more than any of the others in terms of the volume, the possibilities of under the radar public access courses that you can play. But we're gonna touch a few architects and at least let you in on some places where you can learn something from what's left, or simply appreciate the fact that one of those golden age architectural heroes was here at one time and left a mark. A lot of times there's not much left.
And I think we're also going to we've approached this conversation saying, Pinehurst number two, everyone kind of understands and knows that one. Pasatiempo, that just it got revealed to the world again after quite an extensive restoration there as well. These are ones that are generally already known and cover the check the box for what we're talking about in this conversation. So we're sort of going off the beaten path with some of these. Um, they will be familiar to some in a lot of cases, if not all, that are listening to this. But we tried to give something a little bit different here for this conversation. So while those are great examples of public courses from Golden Age architects that you can check off your list, we've played that song before. Let's listen to something new here and go a different direction. So with that being said, Joe, I will give the floor to you actually to start this conversation off.
Well, okay, Al. I think when it comes to accessible places, public golf courses by one of the Golden Age legendary architects, Donald Ross stands head and shoulders above all the others. Again, not specifically his talent for design, but the number of courses that he left behind that any of us can go play and appreciate some things. Some of them have been restored or renovated with a Ross in mind. Some of them may not necessarily have a whole lot of Ross left, but at least you can again set foot on the property and try to figure that out for yourself. So I'm going to start with Donald Ross. It's actually called the Donald Ross Course at French Lick Resort. And that, of course, French Lick, Indiana, known better to basketball fans as Larry Bird's hometown. And it's actually easier to get to than you think. It's 60 miles due west of Louisville. And this resort goes back well over 100 years. They had early golf from Tom Bendelow, the Johnny Appleseed of American course design, and then Donald Ross came along. It's interesting. He built a course that was known for many years as the Hill Course, and I've got different really good sources saying he did it in 1917. Another one said 1920. Brad Klein, in his USGA award-winning book Discovering Donald Ross, said it was 1922. Whatever. The course is now known as the Donald Ross course at French Lick, and it absolutely did host the 1924 PGA Championship. Played at match play. Of course, the great Walter Hagen won the second of 5 PGAs, and he beat the Cornishman, Jim Barnes, a major winner himself, in the final. And what happened to Jim Barnes in this final? He three-putted 4 greens. Well, when you see these greens that Donald Ross designed, you will see why he three-putted 4 times, because you yourself, if they're running at normal speeds, are going to three-putt at least 4 times. There is one particular green on that golf course, the fabulous 8th green, where 3 putts might be an achievement, depending on where your ball lands and where the hole is cut. Okay, what's so cool about French Lick, the Donald Ross course there? Well, it is in a few top 100s. Top 100 you can play, meaning publicly accessible, but it absolutely gets overshadowed by the course that Pete Dye built there in 2007 or 8, which jumped onto everybody's top 100 list for its difficulty and also its design. 8,000 plus from the tips. Pete Dye stuff, volcano bunkers going on. Well, the Donald Ross course just now stretches over 7,000 yards, and some consider it tougher than the Pete Dye course. Yes, even a Pete Dye course with a 301-yard par 3 16th hole, some consider the Donald Ross course even tougher. Why is that? Well, it's laid out over rolling farmland. And what Ross did, as everybody did in the golden age, was he located his green sites and put those up onto elevated parts of that ground. So again, it would drain easily. That's why a lot of times folks located greens up there. So you have a lot of tee boxes that are somewhat elevated, and then you hit down into this valley effect for many of the golf holes, and then uphill for the second. It makes for a challenging walk, but it is walkable, and it's mostly open. There are trees on the property, but most of the golf holes play pretty open, so it is susceptible to whatever breezes you're getting. I played it first, playing hooky from the 1996 PGA Championship at Valhalla on a 96-degree day. It beat me up pretty good. But 10 years later, Lee Schmidt, native Hoosier, who was president of the ASGCA and part of the Schmidt-Curley team, came back and did a restoration, put back about 25 or 30 bunkers, and smoothed out some of the rough edges that had accumulated over the years. So I got to play it again 2 years after that in 2008. And again, came and marveled at the appreciation for a absolutely wild set of greens. Couple of really tough par 3s. I mean, long, 240, 252, and 249 of the 4 par 3s. And they keep the rough pretty healthy, pretty juicy, very tranquil out there. And then again, what do you learn from Ross? Really one of the most challenging set of greens he ever built. Specifically, number 8 as a highlight or low light, depending how you look at it, with 8 feet of fall from back to front. So depending on how quick that green is, there are nightmare putting stories that have accumulated early and often out there, but you marvel at this set of greens. So again, maybe not for everyone, but for those who want to see some authentic Donald Ross left in the routing, as well as some of his greens, that's a great place that I'd recommend starting is the Donald Ross course at Indiana's French Lick Resort.
Yeah, beautiful property. Another place that I've heard about over the years and never gotten the chance to visit. I had some buddies go and do a bachelor trip up at French Lick, and they raved about it, although I think it rained on them the entire time they were there, which made the proceedings all the more difficult as you described them. But uh, yeah, if you want to see some vintage Donald Ross, that sounds like a really, really good option among many options for this man.
For sure. I mean, again, as I said earlier, I'd at least seven or eight totally worthy golf courses where you can find some Ross and purely public or say in the resort category. And another one I'll throw out briefly is Manakiki in the eastern suburbs of Cleveland. Again, like a lot of others in that era, built in 1928 as a private club. And it stayed that way through 1961. And it's been part of the Metro Parks, a true Muni, basically since that time. And again, some really good Ross holes. Has never really been a pure restoration, but there's still a fair bit to see there. 443-yard par 4 eighth, and the 205-yard par 3 15th. Played a few PGA tournaments there in the 50s. Kerry Middlecoff won one there in 53. Julius Boros won one there in 54. So some history, both architecturally and tournament. And again, just to see a good solid routing at what had been a private club in the Golden Age, Manakiki, about 20 miles east of where the Cleveland Guardians play their home baseball games. And if you're there for a trip, go check it out.
Guardian, and whenever I hear Guardians, it still trips me up. I can't, I can't get there. I'm like, what sport is that again? But yeah, we don't have to get into it. But the other ones, obviously everyone knows the Ross Trio and Southern Pines, Pine Needles, Mid Pines. That be your other good complement to Pinehurst number two, and the work Kyle Franz has done out there restoring those places.
Yeah, and I mean, the last one I would mention is George Wright Municipal in Boston, which has been in better and better shape over the last few years. And again, for folks in the Northeast that want a chance to play some legitimate Ross, there you go.
Well, I'm going to go to the Golden Age architect, maybe the darling boy of the Golden Age, and that's Mr. Seth Rayner. Everyone loves Rayner these days, and as this trend of you know the past decade or so, whatever it's been, maybe you have more knowledge about that. When people really started to care about who designed the golf courses, and all of a sudden it appears on the scorecard and in the marketing materials. Um, if you have a Seth Rayner golf course, that's like striking gold. And as it were, there are not a ton of Seth Rayner public designs out there. Um, I mentioned some of the private ones that a lot of people know: Fisher's Island, Camargo in Ohio, Shore Acres in Illinois, Yeamans Hall in South Carolina, to name a few, and his work with CB McDonald across the country. Now, one that I will talk about at the top of this and, evoke the name Gil Hands again is the golf course at Yale, which is currently being redone at his hands. I understand, Joe, that will have a bit more public accessibility when it reopens. You have any more on that?
Yeah, they've gone kind of back and forth over the years with how much outside play or no outside play. And just before this all came to pass, they had fully opened it up. I mean, not like from start to finish, but at least, yes, if you want to go play, we're going to allow that to happen. Um, and then, okay, we basically had you know, pretty big competition to see who would get the commission, to restore this golf course. A lot of top architects, obviously very interested in that job, and the commission went to Gil Hands. So an Ivy Leaguer himself, he is hard at work at it, and my understanding currently is that there will be outside play permitted and encouraged. So I'm sure students, faculty, alumni, and members will all have their special times and booking capabilities, but it does sound like you're going to be able to see some real McRainer, as it's called, when Yale reopens.
And the other place you can see McDonald and Rayner and their great template designs is the old white course at the Greenbrier. Of course, everyone knows that place for its tournament history, but that's also, another high-end resort course. So I went a little different direction. Uh, and I kind of stumbled upon this place, Joe. I was looking up places to play near Baltusrol, going up there in a few weeks to see Gil Hanse and his work at the upper course. Went there previously to see what he did with the lower course. Now the upper course is done, ready to reopen. So I wanted to get in an extra round in the area while I was there, and yeah, stumbled on Rock Spring Golf Club in West Orange, New Jersey. So I hope to get over there because it is a 1925 Seth Rayner design, one of the few publics that you can play. Um, it's his design, so designed in 25. His associate Charles Steam Shovel Banks is the one who actually built the course because Rayner passed away in January of 1926. So even though it's Rayner design, most of the building goes to Steam Shovel Banks. Um, Turning 100 years old this year, Joe, and it almost didn't make it there. It went through some tough times, from what I understood in my research. A few redos that were costly, and then the recession of 2009 hits. So while it was sort of this middling private club, it ends up getting sold a couple of times. It's now operated by Kemper Sports, the management firm there out of Chicago, and it's a public daily fee facility, and it is seemingly going strong. They're still gonna. There's word that maybe Kyle Franz will be the one to come and redo some of the bunkering out there to further enhance this restoration, but 6,600 yards, par 71 on a rolling tree line site, and has a lot of those trademark Rayner elements, some template holes out there. There's a pretty good Redan third hole, from what I understand, built on the side of the cliff. And you can see actually in the horizon the Empire State Building and the skyline of Manhattan. So a nice extra perk of this place too is the skyline views that you get. Um, Double plateau template, some cape-like holes, but Rock Spring, as this conversation goes, was not one I knew before I actually stumbled upon it, and I guess I would have found it before we had this conversation, but I'm looking forward to potentially getting out there and playing because I think I've played Yeaman's Hall, maybe the only Seth Rayner that I've played. So I'm excited to see a little bit more of that work.
Al, you're still a young man, and there's plenty of time to get around to see some of those other Rayner masterpieces. And it's so interesting because obviously he took from his mentor, and then they worked together, C.B. McDonald, and kind of established that idea of finding a good piece of property for a club, or a club had found the property and retained their services, but then laying out these template holes. And that's not something that really went through the rest of the decades. And then there was a sort of rediscovery of Rayner with McDonald, more attention paid like to everything by the time the 1990s rolled around. And some of these quiet classics started to move way up in the rankings because more and more people found out about them and said, my gosh, where has this been hiding all these years? Well, I will certainly tell you, Rock Spring, how is it even possible that there could be an overlooked public hidden gem in the Northeast designed by Seth Rayner? But there it is. That is not something that was on my radar. And knowing how different courses get ranked in the top 100 public and so forth, I mean, that's never been near anybody's list. But again, you said it went through some troubles. And and the idea that somebody could be taking better care of it and wanting to bring back and or preserve the Rayner that's there, possibility of even a Kyle France or an architect enhancing that, really exciting for golfers of the Northeast and for fans of classic course architecture to find something that is that accessible, because most of the courses that Rayner did, the gates are very high and very locked.
Yeah, it's a relatively new, revelation because this didn't become a public course until 2019. So when you're thinking about it in terms of like being ranked over the years, it's probably, largely overshadowed by everything else that's in the Northeast. And then you combine that with, sort of a downturn in quality and conditioning and it going through a sale. But from what I understand, it's sort of making its comeback and trying to be something that's on an elevated scale. And from all accounts that I've read and reviews of people that have played it on Golf Pass and those types of websites, everyone really loves it and it's in great shape. So I'm really excited to get out there and hope it happens this trip. If it doesn't, then, I got to find another excuse to get to West Orange, New Jersey. All right, Joe, that was my number one. And what is your number two?
Okay, I don't know that there's any ranking per se, but the second Golden Age architect that you can go see some of his work is George Thomas Jr., the captain, as he was known. And most of you know George Thomas Jr. for Riviera Country Club, Los Angeles Country Club North, and Bel Air Country Club, among others in Southern California. However, before George Thomas relocated to Southern California, he was a Northeasterner, primarily in Philadelphia, and I actually designed his first championship course, if we call it that, in the Philadelphia area, called White Marsh Valley, which is still going strong today. However, before White Marsh Valley was designed, he did one in Massachusetts called Marion. No, not Merion. Marion, Marion. Yeah. All right. Spell check, Joe. And God, what is Marion in Massachusetts? Okay, this is for connoisseurs only. It is literally on the same road as a perennial top 100 private club called Catanset. That was the work of William Flynn, another phenomenal Golden Age architect. But this little golf course called Marion, man, I almost hesitate to recommend it, but then that's what makes it so compelling. So I can tell you this 9-hole public course, um, architecture scholar Anthony Pioppi did a really nice book in 2006 called To the Nines, and it was about America's best nine-hole golf courses. And he noted that in George Thomas's famous book from 1926 or 27, this 27, Golf Architecture in America, 342 pages, diagrams, photos, I mean, analysis. He used up a total of 5 lines, just 5 lines on Marion Golf Course. Wouldn't you think his very first course would have deserved, earned a little more mention to say this is how I got going. Here's some mistakes I made, or some. No, I mean it was just that brief, and it is so old school, old world lay of the land that it's quite possible he was embarrassed by it. I
Hmm.
don't know. We don't have a quote from him, anything further. But if you're a George Thomas fan and want to see where it all started for him, go out. It's not too far away from Cape Cod. Sits and overlooks Buzzards Bay. So it is a bit of a coastal course, although only one hole of the 9 you can actually see water. What else is on this golf course? Why am I calling it so weird and freaky? Okay, how about 3 par 3s, the third, the eighth, and the ninth, whose greens are obscured by stone walls. Yes, an actual stone wall running across, and there's a slot in it for you to walk through or take your trolley through and finish out the hole. Not just once, like at North Berwick, but 3 times. And the second hole out there, a 290-yard dogleg par 4. And I mean, it is one of the most severe dog legs we've ever seen. Just a very strange golf hole. Now, a lot of experts say much of this was changed from Thomas's days, uh, or compromised in other ways, but not sure how you explain 3 par 3s with stone walls running in front. So you're not going to get the George Thomas Billy Bell bunkering that you got in Southern California on those outstanding golf courses, but you're going to get a taste of primitive, old world, almost prehistoric architecture from George Thomas. Talk is in recent months that Gil Hanse, who did some restoration work next door at Catanset, is handling some restorative efforts at Marion. And I'll be very curious to see what's kept and what isn't, if indeed that's the case. But go play this museum piece.
God, Gil is a busy guy, isn't he? Why we
At
can't do
least
one
it's
of
right
these
down the road.
podcasts
Yeah.
without talking about him.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Truly.
very good. Was that all you had there, or did you want to mention anywhere else?
Yeah, I mean, I'll throw in for fans of George Thomas in Southern California, um, maybe the best of what's left from what he did in the 20s is at the Ojai Valley Inn. And 30 years ago, we would not have called Ojai Valley under the radar because it hosted a senior tour event. Arnie played there, Lee Trevino played there, Chichi Rodriguez and Al Geiberger won tournaments there. But they haven't hosted a big tournament for quite some time. It's just barely 6,300 yards, par 70. But in 1999, following a Jay Moorish renovation, they brought back 2 lost Thomas holes, the old 3 and 4 from Thomas's original design, and worked these into the new configuration. I believe as 16 and 17. Yeah, on the new course. So it's not perfect George Thomas, but for public access, George Thomas at Ojai Valley, about an hour or so north of Los Angeles, you can get some actual George Thomas. A couple of other golf courses that are public in the area that have George Thomas as the architect, but very little left from what he actually did.
Hmm. Well, yeah, I think still people are still high on George Thomas, even those slightly familiar after the LACC US Open. Not too far removed from that. So another good one to check off for sure. So let's go from that to actually a case where this is a course that a lot of people have heard of, and it sort of serves as like the prime example of their work, and it just so happens to be public and accessible in central Wisconsin. William Langford and Theodore Moreau, two guys that were also known for their work with steam shovels. In 1930, opened the links course at the golf courses of Lawsonia. So Lawsonia Links, a 36-hole property there in Wisconsin. You've got another course called the Woodlands, designed by a name I had never heard before, Rocky Roquemore. You got anything on Rocky Roquemore?
I do, yes, yes, an associate of Joe Lee for a number of years, prolific in the 80s and 90s specifically. There you have it.
So the Woodlands course, that's a Rocky Roquemore design there, and Langford and Moreau's Links course, which as it currently stands is number 66 on the Golf Digest um, top 100 public courses in America list. And you can still right now play it for less than $100, Joe. How could that be? My 1-year-old son has come in for this conversation about Langford and Moreau. He really, or maybe it was Rocky Rockmore that piqued his interest. Who's to say? Now, he's going to stand right here and join me for this conversation. But yeah, using their magical steam shovel, they this duo from Chicago created massive greens and hazards, huge wide fairways, deep bunkers, and a very complex set of putting surfaces that some people say are as good as any you can find in the country. So this is their top dog in terms of their work. It's not a private course somewhere. This is it. So you can really experience what Langford and Moreau meant to this golden age of golf course architecture. Of course, being in central Wisconsin, you're competing for attention with Sand Valley and Destination Kohler and Erin Hills. Um, so it may be often overlooked, but in terms of really studying the work of some of the masters of their craft at this point in time, it may not get better than Lawsonia Links.
Now, maybe the perfect example when you bring up under the radar golden age greats, because this golf course has been discovered by a lot of the folks that get around and has popped into various top 100s, and deservedly so. There also have been year by year some restorative efforts from folks to get it as good as it can be again. But man, you are talking about likely the greatest of all under the radar golden age architects. And Langford in particular, with his partnership, a little bit like Flynn and Toomey. Flynn was really the design guy. And Langford, man, I mean, really, even today, not all that many people know much about him, but he was talented. Ivy Leaguer, really good player. And they created courses mostly around the Midwest, but a lot of other places too. They had some terrific work in Florida that almost all of it went away during the Depression through storms or attrition. In addition, there was a close to top 100 private club outside of Chicago called Skokie that had three different design uh, folks involved in the design, including Donald Ross. But some experts say the best holes out there were actually the ones designed by Langford and Moreau. So it's kind of cool that there is a representative course like Lawsonia that keeps that name alive and keeps that firm's name alive to say, don't sleep on these guys. You know, they were just about as talented as anybody in that era, with a style that was reminiscent of Rayner. And so there was confusion, as the years went on. Man, that's just a lot, what Rayner's courses looked like. But it was a certain style, and they did it very well. So still a few other golf courses, especially private courses, that you could go see to be able to compare and contrast. But to go play a public place, especially with that value, uh, this is what this podcast is all about. Go see Lawsonia.
Yeah, like you said as well, it's our understanding that restorative efforts have given the course that's its firm and fast intended playing condition, some tree removal and some touching up here and there. So maybe now, more than ever, is a good chance to go and see what it's all about. Okay, next, Joe, I think a name that everyone should be familiar with.
Well, Al, that would be, the guy I always voted number one as top architect of all time, which was Alistair Mackenzie, the good doctor. And man, we have talked and written a lot of words about Alistair Mackenzie and his designs and his courses and the impact that he made all across the world. So when we're talking about under the radar public courses, you know, let's not forget that when you go to other countries, especially Australia, England, usually you can make an introduction ahead of time, and you'll get a chance to play. So it's a little different than most of our private clubs here, but for fans of Mackenzie, you can go to England and Scotland a little bit, and definitely Australia, a little bit in South America, and get to see some Mackenzie. In the US, we talked about Pasatiempo earlier, hardly under the radar, especially now that Jim Urbina has brought back all of the Mackenzie magic. Um, it's must play again. For my money, it was always must play, but now you're going to see it the best it's been in all these years. So then, where else might you go find some Mackenzie magic? Well, of course, one of the golf courses that we discuss a fair bit because of its cult status is Northwood, which is a 9-hole golf course up north of San Francisco in the Redwoods. And it was built in the 1920s as an amenity for the exclusive Bohemian Club and their summer retreat, Bohemian Grove, right across the Russian River from it. And Mackenzie did the job. It wasn't a long time afterwards where it wasn't fully supported by the Bohemian Club any longer, and just started to fade. Features started to fade, maintenance, lack of funds, and all the rest. And it just kind of continued to do so for many, many years, even with the best efforts of folks in the 1980s when I first saw it and the 1990s. They kept it alive. The local business was enough to keep it going, but there was never enough money to restore Mackenzie's features. And by that, I mean, by the 1900s, the aughts, and the tens, there weren't any bunkers left. Just all these incredible golf holes routed through the biggest, most magnificent trees you had ever seen. So everything, all the connections were close together, really easy to walk, and a lot of fun for the novelty factor, but a little less so for the strategic intent that Mackenzie brought to it. So a couple years ago, enter a young man. I'm going to get his name for you, and William Carlson. Okay, a high school student who lived nearby in Santa Rosa took an interest in golf course architecture and managed to convince the current owners, came up with a plan and said, "Will you let me?" And I said, "Go ahead. We will green light one change, and that's so far." And under his guidance, he built a central bunker on the par 4 sixth about 40 yards short of the green, which was the classic Mackenzie deception bunker,
Mm.
where to look at it, it looks like it's right next to the green. And oh, no, it isn't. So, can influence strategy, mess with your mind a little bit, and everything else. What fun for this young man. I met him in San Francisco last year at the ASGCA annual meeting. Very nice, modest young man with tremendous passion for the topic. I'm wishing him well as he continues his studies, and hopefully Northwood will come in and restore another or bunker or two or three and a few of the cool runoffs and false fronts that Mackenzie had built initially. Never meant to be a championship course, but it is pure Alistair, and hopefully more and more will be restored from that. So that's my annual plug for the 9-hole Northwood in California. Beyond that, I will say, you want to go see some cool Mackenzie and you're making that Irish trip of the trophy courses over there, go play Lahinch. Not everybody remembers that although old Tom Morris designed it back in the 1890s, Mackenzie almost completely redesigned it in 1927. The reason he doesn't get as much credit is because the two funkiest holes in the world, the, the Quirk cult favorites, the Dell, the par three, and then the Klondike, the par five that follows, neither one of them were Mackenzie holes. But of the stuff Mackenzie did do, there's some really, really cool features that still remain. Especially the ninth green and then the 13th hole, a drivable par four, and just 280 yards. I mean, now it's drivable with an iron, but yeah, easily within reach for most modern players. But bunkers, hollows, and a right to left slope squeeze the effective landing area to minuscule proportions. So if you're gonna try to drive it, you could wind up with a really awkward second if you're not where you need to be. But yet the hole's so short, how do you not go for it? So go see some Mackenzie if you're in Ireland. Closer to home, and by the way, Perry Golf can certainly help that Ireland trip and Lahinch happen.
There you go. Uh-huh. Uh-huh.
Okay. Closer to home, the University of Michigan. Yes, Mackenzie's responsible for Ohio State's courts and its leading rival, University of Michigan. Now, a lot of Mackenzie magic disappeared from Michigan's course over the years. Subsequent redesigns, renovations. Arthur Hills did a pretty significant one a few years back. But gosh, there is still some really good Mackenzie to see there. And a couple of holes in particular, you can pay a fee as an outside guest, kind of a welcome to the property for one day sort of thing. And then they also, I think, have packages that you can do this with. Um, the 537-yard par five third hole with some wild Mackenzie contouring. You'll love that. And then the 308-yard par four sixth, which has a horseshoe-shaped green. Interesting stuff that he and Perry Maxwell did over at Crystal Downs, which is not easy to get onto. Very, very exclusive private club. But if you want to go pay a fee and see some cool classic Mackenzie, University of Michigan will still offer you that experience.
Yeah, and right there at the big house too, like literally right across the street, you can see
Exactly. I mean, some great
ball
views
stadium.
of, yeah.
Yeah. I remember going there. I didn't go to the course, but I did learn that it doubled as the like cross country racing grounds when it's not in season. Obviously, you don't have cross country people um, running a race in the middle of play out there. But yeah, I recalled your piece that you did for links on the best Alistair McKenzie courses you can play. That's still up on our website. And yeah, assuming you're not going to go play Royal Melbourne or Kingston Heath, then those are the options that Joe suggested.
Al, what's left in your quiver today?
What's left for me? And we both have a quick bonus at the end of the episode, so stay tuned for that. But um, I'll go. The other Titan whose name we haven't mentioned yet is A.W. Tillinghast. Um, quite the guy, quite the portfolio. Obviously, I did mention Baltusrol, so we kind of did cover him there. But Winged Foot and um, I mean, I could keep going in the Rolodex, but what I want to talk about from his publics and maybe the lesser knowns, I know you've got Brackenridge Park. I think, Joe, I remember seeing something you wrote about that place in Texas um, as one of the great park courses you can play in the country. It's obviously a pretty good track at Omni Bedford Springs, but I want to talk about Swope Memorial, and this is in Kansas City, Missouri. Um, right now, Swope Memorial is closed, so you couldn't close this podcast and go play it because it broke ground earlier this year on a $7 million restoration project and will remain closed for the entirety of this year, projected to open in spring of 26. Mid America Golf is collaborating with CE Golf Design, led by architect Todd Clark, and as well as Ron Witten is involved in this project to restore the Tillinghast design, remove some trees, some modern advancements from what they detailed in a letter to their patrons. They're doing new bunkers, tee boxes, irrigations, greens, and cart paths, all part of the plan to give the Tillinghast routing a facelift. Um, but it's on a really great piece of ground, from what I understand, a rolling, rollicking uh, landscape with fairways that camber and sit on side slopes and a mix of greens atop ridges. It hosted a PGA Tour stop in 1949. It was the only public course to do so that year. Ben Hogan's played out there. Another course where the skyline is properly in view, just 12 miles away. And because of the fact that it's getting this uh, hey, buddy. It's getting a bunch of money inserted into it to make it as close to pure Tillinghast as possible. That's why I want this one on my list, Joe, of the options that you have out there for Tillinghast.
Yeah, great call, Al. It was a favorite, and we're talking again about Swope Park in Kansas City, of a young Kyle Phillips, acclaimed architect who grew up in the area and got a little taste of Tillinghast at that age. And so, uh, basically, there are some other Tillinghast courses around. An interesting option for folks in the Mid-Atlantic is Belmont in Virginia, not too far from Richmond. And that was a course known as a Hermitage in 1949 when Sam Snead won the PGA. Eventually changed to Belmont, fell on very hard times, possibly going to close and disappear forever. And Davis Love's firm hit on an idea that met with the city and the city fathers and the rest of the folks. And what happened was they decided to design a 12-hole golf course from what had been 18 very tired Tillinghast holes. So you will get Tillinghast, almost restored Tillinghast, 12 holes, and then there's a 6-hole short course and a first tee facility. But if you're in the area, that's worth checking out because the Love design team, Davis Love, and Scott Sherman, really brought it back to life, and would be fun to go see.
Yeah, kind of like Ross, and that you have quite a few options here for Tillinghast. So that was exciting to
Definitely.
see. I wasn't really aware that there was that much that was out there that you could play from him. So very cool. Okay. I'm gonna go set Mr. Brooks down again. Thanks for joining us,
Bye,
Brooks.
Brooks.
We've got a little bit more to talk about here.
Bye bye.
So that's Tilly the Terror. Get a chance to see him maybe in the spring of next year in 2026 when Swope reopens. Um, any bonuses, Joe? I teased it. Um, Me or you, it depends. Whoever wants to go first here.
Well, I did want to mention William Flynn, one of the greatest Golden Age architects, but I've not successfully located a public course worthy. If anybody's watching us, listening, and has a suggestion, fire away. In the meantime, I'll give you one more of my Golden Age favorites, Stanley Thompson. Sometimes gets overlooked because he's Canadian. And so, but I grew up on a Stanley Thompson golf course in the suburbs of Cleveland, Ohio, the Beachmont Country Club. And he had a Cleveland office. Cleveland was a booming town in the 1920s. Private clubs popping up all over Cleveland with Donald Ross designs, C.H. Allison, Killingast. I mean, the full complement, and Flynn. But Stanley Thompson was there with an office as well. And Stanley Thompson, most of you know for his incredible resort courses in the Canadian Rockies, Banff, and Jasper specifically. But he did a handful of others, including some terrific private clubs that have hosted multiple Canadian Opens, such as St. George, and then my favorite course up there in the west of Canada, Capilano. But he did do some courses that wound up as public access. One of them is in the western suburbs of Cleveland called Sleepy Hollow, always overshadowed by Westchester County's Sleepy Hollow. This Sleepy Hollow has a lot to recommend in its own right. So it is now, it was private, built in 1924, and ultimately went public, taken over by the Metro Park system in 1963 was the year. So the Cleveland Metro Parks have a Donald Ross in Manakiki, and they have a Stanley Thompson in Sleepy Hollow. So what will you find that's cool? I mean, Stanley Thompson was the one that pioneered building plasticine models of his golf holes. He trained Robert Trent Jones Sr. To go out into the world and make his mark. And of course, some of his greatest traits are building bunkers, green complexes that mimic the mountains in the backdrop. But he was known for some terrific strategic holes in his own right, and uh, and Sleepy Hollow's got him. It does have some spectacular holes because it's right next to God, a big canyon, a gorge, 70 feet deep. And the par 5 14th plays around that on the inside of the dog leg. And I think they're doing some restoration, renovation work there. A couple of par threes that are super solid. And the 170, man, 192 it now plays, the sixth hole, plays over a canyon, and walkers get to walk a beautiful footbridge to get to the green. Anyway, wonderful walk, beautiful in fall. And if you do want to see some Sleepy Hollow for Muni prices, go to Cleveland, play your Donald Ross, and then play Sleepy Hollow from Stanley Thompson.
I love how your list has both Sleepy Hollow and Marion on it, and it's neither of the two that anyone would really be discussing at any point in time
That's
in the
under
same
the radar
conversation.
indeed. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, my last one, and these aren't guys that are well known for their quantity of work, but they're both good players in their own right and have at least one of them has um, a top tier design to his credit. And that is Jack Neville and Chandler Egan and the work that they did combined to create Pacific Grove golf links. 5 miles from Pebble Beach is the municipal course Pacific Grove that I think is the ultimate hidden gem in the country. The first nine holes. The front nine was Chandler Egan. Uh, he actually played a role in the 1929 renovation of Pebble Beach, but in 1932 he built this front nine, which isn't necessarily the course that or the nine that people think about when they're talking about Pacific Grove and how great of a value it is and hidden gem, because it's the second nine from Jack Neville, one of the original designers of Pebble Beach in 1919, that gets all of the love. It was built in 1960, and the way it intermingles with the shore and the coastal dune ridges um, on top of the lighthouse there. What's it called? I have it written down here somewhere.
I think it's Point Pinos.
Point Pinos Lighthouse. So there it is at the very end of my notes list. It's almost as if you're reading my screen with me. But yes, the Neville Nine is the one that gets most commonly discussed. Um, I actually really liked the front nine at Pacific Grove, and um, the quirkiness of it is that it's tight and tree lined, and sort of stuffed between houses. Um, Shorter than your average course, but you kind of made do with what was there, and it's got some views of Monterey Bay as well, mixed in. But yeah, sort of charming in that way, I thought. But it's really the back nine that gets all the attention, and deservedly so. Um, and how could you not love this course in the Monterey Peninsula that you can play for $65 on weekdays? They actually also have a special rate, $45. You can play just the back nine during the first 75 minutes of daylight on a given day, except for Tuesdays, I think. That must be maintenance day. But you can just go out and play that back nine and do it that way. If that's all you really wanted to play, if you weren't worried about playing the front. So I thought that was a cool little quirk of their rating system. But yeah, this is a course that has survived the test of time, and it's an encapsulation of that little town that it sits in. A wonderful place that I think should not be missed on a trip to Pebble Beach. I'm ashamed it took me so long to get out there. I did finally play this year on our trip to Pebble Beach, but had never done it before this year. So I'll be back. That's for sure. It crept into the most fun places I've had the pleasure of playing.
Al, I'm tickled that you finally got out to play Pacific Grove. It's easy to overlook when you're fortunate enough to get a steady diet of Pebble Beach and Spyglass and Spanish Bay and so forth. But for locals, where do you go play for an affordable rate and have some fun? And I first visited Pacific Grove in 1980. Picked up a scorecard and then uh, got to play it. Oh, 2 years later, played it for the first time, um, and played it with my folks 2 years after that, and have been back on multiple occasions since. One of the enduring questions, I mean, Chandler Egan was a terrific player, moved from Chicago to the Pacific Northwest, won the U.S. Amateur, designed a number of really good golf courses in the Pacific Northwest, and as you mentioned, was the primary redesign renovation architect for Pebble Beach ahead of the 1929 U.S. Amateur. They entrusted this to Chandler Egan, along with Robert Hunter, who was Alistair Mackenzie's partner. The biggest mystery is why Jack Neville, who was the primary designer of Pebble Beach in 1916 for the course that ultimately opened in 1919, why did not Jack Neville do a whole bunch more from 1919 through the 1980s? What's the deal? He was selling real estate for Pebble Beach at the time. He went to LA for a little while, became a Lakeside Golf Club member, then went back to Pebble Beach, resumed selling. They finally knocked on his door again in 1960 and had him lay out this 9 oceanside holes for Pacific Grove. and then asked his advice ahead of the 1972 U.S. Open. Like, hey, we've got the guy here who actually designed the course. Maybe we should ask his opinion. And he was still around for the 1982 U.S. Open. Added a bunker that snared Tom Watson on the right side of the 16th hole. Okay, I'm going down that rabbit hole with Jack Neville, but it's just so funny. He obviously had an eye for great golf holes, was a five-time state amateur champion. Why didn't he do more design in all those years? I would have thought he could have been in tremendous demand, having said, "Oh yeah, yeah, I'm the guy that discovered the figure eight routing for Pebble Beach and laid out the golf holes." So, in any case, I love Pacific Grove golf links. Jack Neville, Chandler Egan, two golden age names, not as prominent as some of the other ones on our list, but absolutely deserving to be in this conversation.
Yeah, isn't that funny about Jack Neville? And, as the story goes from Pebble Beach, Samuel Morse, uh, in trying to minimize cost, he convinced the board that A, the course could just be maintained by sheep when they built it, and B, designed at no cost by two amateur golfers, and that was Jack Neville and Douglas Grant. And as they say, one of those ideas was better than the other because there's not sheep on Pebble Beach currently maintaining things. I think it's quite a big operation these days.
So I've heard. Yeah.
Well, cool. Obviously we went through quite a few courses here and mentioned some others that were worthy in the conversation, but would love to hear of other uh, publics out there from Golden Agers that are worth going and take a look at. Comment on the video or on the audio, wherever you're listening, on social. And yeah, we'd love to hear it. But for Joe Passoff, we're signing off again on another episode. We've got several more in this season to come. Looking forward to giving you more from Links. I'm Al Lunsford. Thanks for listening.